looks like we're ready to go. Thanks everyone for joining us and welcome. I'm Brad Pitts. I'm a growth strategist and chief marketing officer with the CMO Syndicate. And I'm excited today to co-host our point of view conversation with my colleague and someone who I get the chance to collaborate and learn from all the time, uh, Jennifer Welch, who is a Fortune 500 brand strategist, advisor, and a founding partner here at the Syndicate.
Yay! So happy to be here. Thanks, Brad, for the warm introduction as well. We always say that the CMO Syndicate is really just about the brain trust, and that's part of why Brad and I are here today. We had a point of view, and we wanted to share it with you. And in fact, generally, what happens when all of us in the CMO Syndicate get together is we all have a point of view, and we all end up learning from each other. So what we thought with these webinars is that we try and share that point of view with you. You might have an opposing point of view, or you might not. But today's topic that we wanted to cover with you is a tension that Brad and I feel a lot of CEOs even feel and maybe even resist to a certain degree. And this is notion of, do I need a personal brand, or is this about becoming, God forbid, an influencer? And Brad and I have had quite a spirited conversation about this, and we're here to say no, this is not about you becoming some sort of influencer. But what we do believe is that, as people in the marketing realm and the brand profession, is that you do need strategic visibility. Not only visibility for visibility's sake, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but visibility that aligns with and amplifies your corporate brand. So we called this session Power Brand Moves, not Power CEO Moves. And that's what we're going to try and unpack in the next 20 or so minutes.
Yeah, we're not going to click through any slides. We're going to have a real conversation. I guess a carry on to the conversation that we've already been having about this, and how your leadership presence as a CEO can engender trust not only in the marketplace but with your employees, accelerate sales by creating clarity for what you and your brand stands for, attract better talent and actually create a pull for your talent coming into the organization, and to elevate your company's brand equity if you do it right. And that's really the important parts of the components of taking a brand and what the company stands for, but how do you actually execute and that become an actual brand personality that people recognize?
I think that's a good one. We called these sort of the goals for this conversation today. And it's important for us because what we often see are, and I'm sure many CEOs might agree with this, is random acts of marketing. You're
Mm.
not really sure the why. And one of the things that Brad and I, some of the other CMOs talk about a lot is, can we help people understand the why, or even ask the questions, why are you doing this? And so what Brad just outlined sort of in the goals for having this point of view conversation with everyone today is to help you understand that there should be a why. And if there's not a why, then you're probably just contributing to noise. You're probably not adding value. And even worse, you might be devaluing your personal brand or your corporate brand. I have a personal passion around things like brand valuation. It's a real thing. Just like you can value your house or value your car or any other asset, brands can also be valued. A big shout out to my mentors, a company called Brand Finance. I had the honor and the privilege of working with them on several projects to understand how brands get valued and how you can track that back down to things that you can actually do to build value. Um, we believe that your brand is probably your most scalable asset,
Mm.
and I would venture to say your most valuable asset. I'll give you a couple of stats. So I looked this morning just because I was curious. I don't look at it every day, but the most valuable brand on the planet, as ranked by Brand Finance, is unsurprisingly Apple. And Apple's brand valuation is currently sitting at $575 billion. I promise you, there's not a headquarter or an office location that Apple owns that is worth 5.75 billion. So, in my point of view, your brand is your most valuable asset. Other $100 billion brands are the other usual suspects: Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Walmart, Samsung and TikTok as well. And just for kicks, I'm a former Shell brand strategist. I happened to look at the Shell brand this morning, and it was still valued at about 45 billion, which is funny where it was when I left. So I don't know if I need to call them and see if they need some more help in getting that up there again. But I think the point is that the brand has value, and the CEO should be leading that brand valuation with your voice, with your presence. And it's not about an ego self promoting or even an influencer sort of tactic, but it's strategic. And that's what Brad and I were talking about. We were asking each other, well, would you do it like this or do you feel like this? And Brad and I were like, well, we actually do have a point of view. And that's what we're here to sort of unpack with you today.
Yeah, and to put that in context, so and to make it really clear, we're talking about brand valuation, not comp or market cap or corporate valuation, right? So
Right.
Apple's corporate valuation at 3 point something trillion dollars, the brand component of that valuation is that $500 million. So basically 15% of the overall company value is the brand and what people engender and trust within that brand itself. So it's an important part of building an organization because it establishes already when you say the brand name and other famous brands, people already know what to expect. Apple has a very distinct persona and presence and what people expect from it. Starbucks, same thing. Disney, the same thing. You can already, as soon as you say the brand or you see the logo, you already recognize what that stands for. That's what that valuation is based off of.
But let that sink in what Brad just said. So in Apple's case, half a trillion, so 500 and some odd billion dollars of brand value. That is insane. Like when I first started working with companies like Brand Finance, I was like, that can't be true, right? I mean, Shell didn't have a piece of steel in the ground worth, 12 billion. I mean, so when you think about what that means for the company, and if the CEO, so what we see often is that the CEOs really shy away for a variety of reasons. They shy away from putting their voice out there, putting their personal views out there. And Brad, you gave me a new person to follow yesterday, and she uses the term pointy point of view. Say a little bit more about that because I absolutely love that.
Yeah, so Susan Minuchin is a professor at Kellogg, and her work is primarily focused around selling yourself and your ideas. And one of her seminal works that she focuses on is making sure that when you have an opportunity to communicate, that you communicate with purpose, that you have a clear point of view. People don't need to necessarily agree with it, and you need to establish what that point of view is, and people can opt in or out of whether they agree with you. And it's it's provocative. It's kind of a controversial thing. You don't need to uh, kind of suppress your ideas and in order for just to make things nice. It's more about being authentic for yourself and having a very clear point of view. But that's when you think about CEOs and how they represent their organization, it is a brand extension because as your role, you create reputational risk for things that you say. You create other types of risk that are managed by the company, financial risk as well, depending on comments made at investor presentations and so forth. But the fear is, I think, often that CEOs don't want to expose themselves on social media because of fear of triggering some of these risks. And we're here to say that it creates a lot more um, value for people to engage with and understand what the company's direction is, why they should work here, what the philosophy is of the leadership team, and more broadly, it becomes part of the social selling that's needed for an organization to be active and for people to at least know what the company is and who it stands for. Not everybody can be an Apple. Apple stands alone and it's a household brand. But if you're a mid-sized organization that competes in a competitive environment, how do you differentiate versus everybody else? And it's by having a clear brand that you can stand behind, that you communicate, and that you're proudly out there representing what the brand stands for across your social and your PR platforms.
You brought this up yesterday. We were talking about this. I had a client, and I didn't bring this up as an example, but we had a client last year in the energy space, and for a variety of reasons, a lot of leaders in the energy space take a back seat. They just hope that the brand can communicate on its own. They don't actively endorse. And I think it's a fear of being on the wrong side of whatever other viewpoints may or may not be. But this particular company, while many of their performance levers in their marketing function were non existent or broken, the one thing that they did really well is their CEO had a pointy point of view and was continually out on the front foot and speaking on behalf of the industry. And Brad, you spoke about this yesterday, which is why I thought about it. It's a lot of these CEOs are well known in their industry,
Mm.
and they are a force for good. And the industry may know that, but not everyone knows that. And so by exposing that, you are a rising tide lifts all boats. You are helping the industry, which may have a reputational issue, that you actually, as a CEO, as a leader, and as a respected leader in the industry, can help lift that. But also, you are out on the forefront for your company and not hoping that the brand will do all the work on its own. I often say, like, we had this conversation about when the CEO is the face of the brand. And let's be honest, you can probably count on your hands how many CEOs on the planet are the face of the brand, like the Richard Branson's, like the Steve Jobs, like the, there's not that many. There's far more companies that the brand is known where the leadership team is not known. But what happens is I call it the halo effect, and I use these little teaching tools all the time. You want your brand to be sort of the nesting doll, the overall, but then there are ways in which that brand needs to also be represented by the products, by the value props, by what the CEO is out speaking about and passionate about. And it's not dissimilar, it's not a distinct brand, it's within the brand. It's helping build the brand because the good qualities, the things that you're going to dial up about the CEO and their visibility are going to build the brand in and of itself. Just like the brand will give things to the product or give things to the industry or give things to the leadership team, those assets will also build the brand. And I think it's important that there are only a few out there where the CEO is the brand, right? We gave some examples yesterday.
Yeah, there's a few, plenty where you can, very few people can name the CEOs of companies, like you just said. And there's some kind of hallmark CEOs that are out there that you can just like, oh, that company, that's this CEO. But not every CEO needs to be that person. Now, it really depends on the environment, though, I would say, because many
Yes.
CEOs, one of the CEOs that I supported of a bank was very involved in the community, in the local community where the bank was headquartered, and was well known in the business community. It is well known and is often invited to boards, is very active in the community, and his brand is that of a deal maker. He connects people. He knows is very active, and that is a brand. Now he's not active on social media to a certain extent. I mean, he does more PR related pushes on LinkedIn, and that was some of the things that we were working on when I was there. But he does have a brand, and the brand supports what the bank stands for, which is a community bank that's there to support local businesses. And I think you've got to look. Sometimes we think about, oh man, I'm going to get involved in social media, and then people outside of my market are going to know who I am. Not really. It's more about just clarifying how do you bring that brand to life as a
The human.
person, as a human, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
bring like kind of bring dimension to it. So it's not just a logo; it's a logo and this personality.
That's it's really important. And I think if we go back to sort of the goals, the things that we wanted to get out of today, part of the company, it's not just about the products and the customers. So when we do brand work, we always start with the inside out. It's always about the people. It's always about the employees. It's always about the partnerships. It's always about the vendors. It's always about the supply chain, because if they don't buy into, emotionally buy into the brand, the company, then what do you really have? You're just pushing products on the market. And so when you think about the CEO's responsibility, your responsibility as a leader is to attract talent. I used to say, I
Yeah.
can remember the days in dealing with a few boards who shall remain nameless, who thought their competitors were only the folks in their industry. That is not your competitive set. Your competitive set is who is attracting the best and the brightest minds. And specifically today, right? Specifically today. So the job of the CEO is to be the chief HR talent attractor. And by being visible in, whether it's, I think it's a great example, like in the community, we have several examples of CEOs who are active with, whether it's a United Way or whether it's with, I can give a really good one on like the sex trafficking. Like, this CEO is known for being passionate about certain things. It brings that human element, and it helps people say, that's a company I can get behind. That may not be my personal hobby horse, but it is allowed in the space of being a part of that brand, is that I can be a human there, right?
Yeah. And it's not about always choosing provocative topics, right?
Yeah.
There was a trend in kind of the 2019, 2020s where there were social unrest and so forth, and some companies took a stand and made a statement and attached their brand to a way of being and have continued that, and some got blowback for it, and other ones stayed out and that they just did. But it's a choice, and it goes back to what the pointy point of view, or the point of view, is that you have a choice to stand for something and make a point. Choose something. Like, you can choose to not do something, or you can choose to activate, and that's one of the opportunities that every company has. And to your other point, Jen, think about the competition for talent now in the AI space.
It's
It
frightening.
2 3 years ago, all of those software engineers and financial analysts, where were they going? They were going to investment banks, they were going to Meta and Google because they wanted to work there. And then all of a sudden, all these AI companies are coming out, and now the competition for that level of talent is very high. They're getting huge paydays for, especially the ones with experience now. Meta's paying ridiculous sums of money for these guys, and that's where they're going. And so, those are companies that have solid brands. Jamie Dimon's out there. People, that's probably a household name that many people recognize at JP. But they're struggling now. They're struggling. I wouldn't say struggling, but there's increased competition for the talent that they're seeking,
That's
and
it.
that's something that they haven't dealt with.
And I think many CEOs, I don't want to preach to the choir, but the CEO job is the sustainability of the company, not green
Mm,
sustainability, not environment, the sustainability of the company. And whether that's the inputs, like the employees, the connections, like the supply chains, obviously the customer side of it, that's where I think a lot of people go first. I've worked with many CEOs where the bigger challenge was they were only focused on the investors and not focused on the employees or the customers. Some are pretty much only focused on the customers and not on the employees or the investors. So it has to be all of this. But the point of view that Brad and I think we share is that the CEO has a responsibility to the health of the company, to be leading. And this is not about what your kids are watching on TikTok and Instagram with the influencers. That's not what this, you're not selling your body, right? You're selling your perspective. You're selling your point of view. This is really tying in very nicely to this whole, because this is a series that we do on point of view, and the fact that we're talking about having a point of view on a point of view is interesting. But I think we want for CEOs to feel comfortable in their own skin and feel comfortable that leading a conversation is a role that you can and should take on, and there are ways to do it. I think we would also say that I think Brad brought up a point with AI, you may be outsourcing, some companies may be outsourcing some of the junior marketing work to AI.
Mm.
Jury's out on whether they're doing it well or not. But when you think about what you are going to speak on and the channels that you're going to use and the topics and your point of view, please have a CMO helping you, guiding you about risk, reward, and opportunity, and brand and reputation enhancement, and measuring that impact. Don't do it alone, and you don't have to. There are plenty of folks out there that can be your sounding board. Brad and I'd be happy to be your sounding board on what makes sense if you're going to dip your toe into the water, and where you should take a stand. Right?
Yeah, and let's talk about some action items, I think, for the
Perfect.
CEOs. How do we get this right? So the first thing you need to do is clearly define what your leadership message is. It should directly support the company's strategy. It should be aligned with the company's vision, its purpose, and then how are you supporting as a CEO getting that message out there and reinforcing it consistently? And that's really the next thing is you have to show up consistently. And whether it's the industry events, the boardrooms, the local community events, the LinkedIn, wherever you choose to use your brand and the power of your reach and your voice, repetition is what builds recognition, and that's what all companies need. They need repetition, builds recognition, recognition builds consideration, consideration builds conversion. That's the way that people make decisions, and they will not buy from you if they have no idea who you are. So that's the first part. And then the final one is avoid the ego trap. Like this is not about increasing followers. This is about being clear, consistent, and very focused on what the business impacts are. How do you translate where you're choosing to use your voice and the power behind it to influence your business outcomes, the community, the type of customers and that you're attracting? Those are all really, really important.
Yeah, and I think Brad mentioned this as well, uh, especially related to like the ego. When you're thinking through this, you want to think about talking, don't be speaking more about yourself than the customer. Now, can you mix personal messages with the corporate message? Yes. But you want to have thought through this. You don't want to freeform. You want to ensure that you are hitting on those key points because what you say matters. What was the old E.F. Hutton advert? Like people are listening. And what you say in marketing speak, you might see this more now than in the past, signaling. So
Yeah.
what you say is a signal to the market, and I know a lot of publicly traded companies are acutely aware of this. I don't want to use that as a fear. We want you to be okay with it. It just takes the planning. It's like what Brad said, diligent, thoughtful, consistent, repetition. And then don't outsource your point of view to the point where it no longer feels authentic. And I think
Mm.
that's what we fear sometimes is by abdicating your thoughts to lower the junior team, then it becomes inauthentic. And so you as a human have a point of view. And as long as you've thought through what you want, what the purpose is, and how to articulate that, you're in a safe space. You're in a safe space. Your visibility isn't vanity. It's sort of your brand multiplier. And we want you to get comfortable with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we take a couple questions because I know we're getting tight on time.
Okay.
Um, there's one here that says it's from John Price, and he says, "How do I balance authenticity with the risk of oversharing? I don't want my personal life to dilute our corporate brand." Hmm. Yeah, that's the risk. So what are your thoughts, Jen?
Well, it's what we just talked about. It's about being the alignment. So if you understand where you can contribute to the brand and you have a point of view and you can lead that conversation for the brand, then it's not going to be the oversharing. It's not going to be the personal things that you do on the weekend that aren't going to further the brand. So that's why it's about being thoughtful and planned so that you're not, and look, I'm guilty of this. Brad knows this. I'm guilty of this. I will overshare if I haven't thought. because I can just talk and I can ramble. And Brad's laughing because it's true, right? So for me, I have to be thoughtful and I have to go through what it is I want to communicate so that I don't ramble and get off track. I mean, Brad, you see me do that. So I have to practice. And I think that's really important. I would say that that's important.
Yeah. There's another question here around being the face of the brand versus letting the brand be its own. The board is conservative and doesn't want to take the risk. And yeah, it's a fair question. There we talked at the top of the conversation about well-known people, Buffett, Branson, Satya from
Jobs,
Microsoft, like
yeah.
Bill Gates, like these are people that are almost to in certain circles vilified, right, for the role that they play. What and the concern is valid. However, put it on the other side. Like those brands, I think, have gone to a certain point where the succession planning is probably too far, right?
Right.
Where,
Right.
if Richard Branson leaves or something happens to him, the next question would be like, what's going to happen to Virgin? So
That
how do you
is such a
keep,
great point.
yeah,
No, no, it's super important, right? That is so, and that's I think why we talk so often about it's part of building the brand. But if your CEO, if you as a CEO are the brand, then anything that happens to you impacts the whole company. So we just saw the CFO on the kiss cam. Everybody knows that, right? Um, or any other mistake that happens, you have someone that gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar, right? And that impacts the entire company. So you almost have to de-risk it. You can lead it, but if you are it, my point of view is that you put the company at risk because anything that happens, or let's say, God forbid, you get hit by a bus. What happens, right? What happens? So we didn't talk about that yesterday, but I think that's super important.
well, imagine there are probably many people in the audience that their name is the company name on the front
Oh
door.
yeah, yeah.
And so yes, you are effectively the brand. Even if it's third, fourth generation that your company has been managed and run as a family enterprise, you are effectively the brand itself. And so the actions that you take and the notoriety that goes with that and what your brand is known and stands for, your voice has a lot of power in the industry because you've been around and it means something. And when you say something about what's innovative, what's new, what's going out of style, all of those have a significant weight, more so than other people, because of what your company stands for in the space. And you, as the person with the name on the front door, you need to leverage that and for the benefit of your organization, and not stand back from the thought leadership that can be created.
So I see that we're getting a little bit close to time, and we need to start to bring this back and wrap this up. Brad, closing thoughts.
Yeah, so if what we've talked about today has provoked any thoughts or you found it interesting and you're wondering if your marketing team is delivering on what it should be, if there's more opportunity for it to be contributing to your revenue, we offer a 4-week diagnostic of your team and what the marketing efforts are delivering. And it's fast, it's quick, it's not a lot of effort from the team side, it's mostly on ours, looking at your data, evaluating your business, and giving you clear direction of where you should be going next. We'll give you 3 to 4 ideas of what the next best steps are for your organization, leveraging our years and years of experience running marketing teams. So
One
if
of the
you're interested in that, reach out. You can fill out a form on our website or reach out at hello@cmosyndicate.com and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's about confidence, and a lot of times leadership teams don't have the knowledge or the confidence that their marketing team is producing the ROI that they need or expect. And so, just running a quick audit like this will give you a lot of confidence. The things that you're doing really well, and then the places where you've got gaps. So, I highly, highly recommend some sort of audit.
Yeah. With that, I think we're wrapped. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.